So for today, the first session this morning will touch on global perspectives on gender equality and positive masculinities. We are really proud to have an amazing lineup of speakers, but before we get started, I want to acknowledge our sponsors. So we have Algonquin College, Uniglobe CBO Travel, TD, University of Saskatchewan, Carleton University, Brandon University, and University of Guelph, who have agreed to sponsor the event, and without their contribution, we would not be here today. So a huge thank you just before we get started. And one last thing that I want to do before we get started is to acknowledge the land on which I am, which is the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, also known as Ottawa. But I know many of you are joining us from around the world, so please use the chat to share any information or where you're from, just so that we can get the conversation started and make it an interactive session. Finally, if you have questions to ask, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So the chat will be monitored, but we may not be able to catch all of the questions that you ask in the chat. So please make sure that you use the Q&A, and there will be time at the end of the session to ask your questions to our esteemed panelists. So without further ado, I want to introduce our moderator for this session. Her name is Wanjiru, and she is a gender equality and social inclusion advisor. She's from Canada, but she's currently based at the Association of Startup and Small and Medium Enterprises Enablers of Kenya, also known as ASEC. And she has a degree in political science and labor law and certificates from Harvard in religion, peace and conflict, and in project management. She has dedicated her career to humanitarian work, advocating specifically for gender equality. So, Wanjiru, I'm inviting you to open your camera and your microphone, and the floor is all yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Sophie. I'm Wanjiru, and I'm excited to be here with you as we have a very healthy and progressive conversation on global perspectives on gender equality and positive masculinity. So, as we know, we've fostered conversations about gender equality for years, but we're doing this because it's important to acknowledge that for it to expand into a way that is progressive for all of us, we must include conversations with men and boys and how their positive masculinity can influence an equitable world, right? So this evolution stems from understanding that gender dynamics don't just have to do with women, they have to do with all members of society, regardless of their gender and their identity. So our efforts in hosting this dialogue they stem from our commitment to our Ignite project, and its ultimate outcome on gender equality is to have a world where women have equal access to resources, to leadership roles, to decision-making power, and to opportunities. So it stems from both classrooms, from work, from anything you can think of, from playing fields, from sports, from home, anywhere you could think of, from the most peaceful communities to the most conflict-afflicted areas. It's important that we harbor spaces where positive and meaningful conversations are carried out by men and by boys in order for us to break and dismantle these harmful stereotypes that have carried on since the beginning of time, and for us to nurture a space where we have a culture of respect and a culture of inclusion. And as this shift happens, it's important for us to all recognize that masculinity, much like femininity, is not just one thing. It's not a uniform construct. It's a diverse spectrum of experiences that varies across cultures, contexts, time, and individuals. You, me, our grandparents, and our future generations. So in 2015, the United Nations adopted what we know as SDGs, which is Sustainable Development Goals. And the time span for the goal to be met was about 15 years. So 2030 is when this was supposed to be met. As we know, we're now in 2024, that's way past the halfway line. And unfortunately, our goal has not been met. Our goal of gender equality has not been met just yet. Unfortunately, according to gender-related indicators, we're actually going backwards instead of progressing. Even like an on-ground example for that is in Kenya, there's been this uproar of femicide, which is the killing of women based on their gender, women and girls. So even just by that alone, we can see that we're not where we want to be with gender equality. So it's important that we nurture conversations around positive masculinity so that we are finding different ways of how to address this problem and finding solutions, right? Okay, and so we'll have Sarah just tell us what the dialogue objectives of this conversation here are today, and then I'll move on to introduce our panelists. Okay, I'll just jump in to introduce the people that we have here with us today. So our first one is Janani Lom. He's a seasoned professional in inclusive development. He's worked with many organizations in both emergency and development programs. He has a bachelor's degree in public administration, a postgraduate diploma in project planning and management, and a certificate in gender and women's issues. And there's still more, a master's degree in governance and ethics. Hello, Janani. We're happy to have you here with us. And I love everything that you've studied and everything that you've worked for, everything that you are really. So that is Janani. So our second panelist is Innocent Kachingwe. Innocent is joining us from Sri Lanka. He's a social development professional and gender equality advocate with 6 years working in social inclusion spaces. He's interested in women's empowerment, feminism, and the promotion of gender equality. Hello, Innocent, in Sri Lanka. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
And thirdly, we have Thomas Sitole. He's an international development practitioner with more than 10 years experience as a youth development expert and a GESI, which is gender equality and social inclusion specialist in Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Uganda, South Africa, Botswana, Zambia, Malawi, and Cameroon. He is from Zimbabwe, but is currently working in Accra, Ghana. Hello, Thomas.
Thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now over to you, Sarah. Okay, sorry, we seem to have some problem with that. We'll just jump right into our first question, which will be answered by all of our panelists individually, and then we'll come together to just have some discussions about it at the very end of this. So for our first question, regardless of gender, how can we challenge and redefine traditional notions of masculinity to create a more inclusive and healthy environment for all individuals across the world? First to answer will be Janani. Over to you, Janani.
Thank you very much, Wanjiro, and thank you everyone who has joined in for this very important discussion today. I know after the discussion, we will have given a booster shot to SDG 5. So just to dive in directly to the question that you asked, I think one of the most important ways that I think we can challenge the traditional notion of masculinity is actually to challenge harmful masculinity in itself. Harmful masculinity has actually restricted men to adhere to traditional gender roles like dominations over women. It has also restricted men to, it has also limited men and boys to, to express their emotion in a healthy way. And harmful masculinity has also justified aggressions and violence over women. But I think so. It is very important that while we challenge the traditional notion of masculinity, we address this harmful stereotype that put pressure on men to conform to these rigid and often destructive ideals of masculinity. And once we can do that one, we'll be able to move towards a society where men and boys can start to express their emotion in a way that is more beneficial for all the members of the society. And I think that that is not the only thing. We can also do what we call celebrations of diversities within masculinities. So I think it is important that we embrace the different diversities of masculinities, the diverse expression of masculinity that we have, and start to look at men also as nurturers and artists and sensitive individuals. We've always looked at men as people who are very dominant and being very aggressive. So I think we need to, start to celebrate different diversities of masculinities, where we start to look at men as nurturers and artists as well. And I think it is also very important that we need to educate and engage. We need to provide education about what healthy masculinity is. And this education, we can actually target schools and workplaces to, and community as well. So this, we can include discussion on, healthy masculinities and things like positive communications. And if we can do that, this will also help us so much to move from the traditional notion of masculinity to a positive masculinity. And I think we should also celebrate the people that I call them role model. In Kiswahili, they call them wanaume wa kuigwa. These are role model men. There are many men out there whose expression of expression of masculinity is something that we should celebrate, because they are modeling the way for the future generations. They are modeling the ways to the next generations of men who will express their emotion in a way that their emotion and masculinity in a way that is conducive for everyone in our society to thrive. So I think these men have to be celebrated so that they can, they can model the way for the others. They can empower these coming generations of boys and men to express masculinity in a way that is positive and in a way that is inclusive for our society. Thank you.
Very well said, Janani. Thank you for that. An important thing I've recently heard is that there's been the intro and the big growth of women in the working industry, and as that does happen, we also need to learn to nurture men taking on that role of being the caregivers and the caretakers, right? So that would be one step, like you've said, in nurturing positive masculinity. Thank you so much for that. Secondly, we'll have, sorry for that, Innocent. If you can please answer that question, thank you.
Thank you so much, Njiro. Firstly, I would say as men, we need to be deliberate in shaping our families, or we need to be deliberate in shaping our families or peers' views on gender roles, and especially at our household level. As men, we need to take the leading role in our families to ensure that our children um, are taking part in the household chores, and especially in this developing part of the world where gender roles are specifically defined. We need to ensure that children are taking up roles, household roles without attaching them to their gender. And as men, we also need to learn to call out sexist language within our peers. It's very important that we use language that does not demean women. And this should begin in our families, then in our community, and especially at our organizations where we work, because that's where the whole programming begins. So we need to adopt a certain concept like policies in our policies, in our work documents. We need to include language that actually promotes sensitivity towards women, so that we are not relegating women to subjects of men. Again, we need to teach boys to be champions of equality at a tender age. It's our responsibility as men. Men that are woke, we are men that are exposed, we understand the need for gender equality. It is important that we, as parents or as uncles, as any other men in a society, it is very important that we be exemplary to younger boys by teaching them to stand up to inequalities in their spaces. And then as parents, we can also help children develop cross-gender friendships within the community through participation in children community activities, maybe organizing play dates with children of our family friends and stuff like that, so that they begin to understand at a younger age the need to understand each other's roles in their lives better. That way, they grow up understanding that we are all equal and we all need the same opportunities to excel in life. Thank you so much, Wanjiru.
Thank you so much for that, Innocent. Thirdly, we'll go to Thomas. I'll just re-ask the question again for anybody who needs it. Regardless of gender, how can we challenge and redefine traditional notions of masculinity in order to create a more inclusive and healthy environment for all individuals? Over to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much, Wanjiru. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be part of these very important conversations that explore how men can also come on board in terms of making sure that we achieve SDG number 5, which is gender equality. Many a time when we talk about gender equality, we think that these are women's issues, but as men, we need to play our part as well. So what I feel is very important is that we start with socialization. This is how we bring up our boys, our girls. Many a time, as we live in a patriarchal society, we have established norms, values, and notions of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a boy, and what it means to be a woman or a girl. And these notions mostly gravitate towards harmful masculinities and don't promote gender equality. That is very important for me. That's the point of departure. Let's transform, challenge, and overhaul how we socialize our young people, our children. What it means to be a woman and to be a man today must reflect the times, current times we live in, where we want to live in healthy environment, peaceful environment. Hence, what it means to be a man yesterday does not necessarily mean what it means to be a man or a woman today. So gender equitable socialization that is anchored on justice, equality, inclusivity is what is going to help us make sure that we work together towards ensuring that there is gender equality, starting with our families, because socialization is a very important aspect of propagating the correct values, principles, and notions that will ensure that our families are progressive, embrace positive masculinity, not the one anchored on domination of other genders. The second one is on fathers to be engaged to participate in caregiving roles. Many a time, men are viewed as breadwinners, as providers for their families. They hardly participate in caregiving roles. So what this means is that the role of providing care to our children, to our partners, to our families is usually left to women. And this, I would want to admit that this is the genesis of the masculinity that we're talking about, where from the very outset, the roles that we give to boys mostly lean towards dominating other genders. And because the notions of masculinity right from the outset then don't focus so much on men providing the caregiving aspect, it means that most of these roles are left to women. And as a result, we don't participate in the parenting roles as men, but we are saying we want to play actively the parenting roles as well. And the next point is also ensuring that men support women in their economic empowerment advantage. Why? Because many a time you realize that, as I indicated, that the caregiving role that we leave for women takes away most of the time. So it means women have very little time to participate in activities and other initiatives that can enhance their economic development or that can allow them to advance, be it in their careers, because they are overburdened by the caregiving role. So as men, we need to support women in making sure that we give them enough time and resources so that they also develop economically. The next point is to engage men and boys in interrogating and challenging these gender power dynamics. Many a time we feel that these roles are not detrimental to us men. But if you look at it, even as men and boys, we also suffer a lot when we continue with the harmful masculinities that have, from time immemorial, defined what it means to be a man. And it is very critical and important at this stage, as men and boys, to challenge those harmful traits, those harmful roles that do not support and empower us to make sure that we live in healthy and peaceful environment. I'll stop here for now. Over to you, Wanjiru. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Thomas. That was very beautifully said. And it is true, times are changing. The societal norms we knew of before are not the societal norms of now. So it's important that we're all keeping up, that we're all being inclusive, and that we're all being respectful. So thank you for that. So for our second question, what are some practical strategies and initiatives that individuals, communities, and organizations can implement to promote positive masculinity and encourage open dialogue around issues such as emotional expression, vulnerability, and healthy relationships? And for that, we will start with Thomas, please. Sorry, Innocent. Over to you, Innocent.
Thank you, Wanjiru. I think firstly, we as men, we need to understand we have a problem here. And the problem is that the current definition or the current notion of masculinity is wrong. And to do that, and since we acknowledge that it is wrong, then it is on to us to ensure that we correct that. And one of the ways is to be an active ally and an advocate of women empowerment or women initiatives. There are several initiatives that women are coming up with in our communities that seek to empower themselves. I think it is important as men that understand that women have been disadvantaged for so long. It is very important that we join such movements, we join such initiatives and support women. That way, you're redefining your masculinity, because then you understand that, okay, there is a problem here, and the problem is that women are disadvantaged. What do? I support them. So as a man, you need to understand that and be an ally, an advocate of gender equality, an advocate of women empowerment. And also as a man, you just need to inform yourself, research, read a lot, learn from others, and understand that women do not really owe us anything. We must be intentional in wanting to spread the message of gender equality or positive masculinity. So we can even learn from the women and spearhead community initiatives that actually target men to teach each other or to embrace the notion of healthy masculinity. And also in our workplaces, we know workplaces in our communities or wherever we find ourselves in, we know that there are certain women that are very capable of doing the work that we usually give to men. It's important that we recognize such women, and it's important to lobby for such women to take leading roles in our communities, workspaces, and what have you. And then as organizations also, especially those that are donor organizations, there is a need to redirect our focus. to target programming that actually deals with behavioral change, and especially behavioral change within main spaces. It's important to support initiatives that deal with promotion of healthy masculinity. There are a lot of there's a growing school of thought that actually believes that gender equality to be achieved, it is important that we also include men in the programming stages. So that's very important because men are perpetrators of violence. And it's important that donor agencies realize this and then redirect our focus to promote behavioral change programs amongst men. Thank you so much, Wanjiru.
Very, very, very well said, Innocent. Thank you for that. And it is true. It's all our jobs. It's not just the women, once again. It is everybody's job to make sure that this is different, that we're not existing in the same dire society that we always have. And now, thank you for that, Innocent. Now over to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much, Wanjiru. I think it is very important that we convert male decision makers into champions for women. Many a time it's men who have influence and make decisions, be it at home, at community level, at organizational level. And once these men take an active step and role and take a stand in promoting and championing the cause of women, I think we'll move towards somewhere. And then I think, secondly, if we can use innovative and creative ways of spreading the message and creating safe spaces that make sure that people can then have honest and frank conversations around these very difficult issues of our time. We can use films. One good example is Ghana film that we have used in many countries, and as I think some of our partners have used that. It has enabled communities and people to have a frank dialogue on the issues that affect them because they relate with these issues and they are not just narrating stories, but they're talking about lived experiences. I think we also need to challenge our perceptions of gender roles, especially looking at our behavior as men. Many a time we think that because it's women who seem to be on the receiving end, as it were. But there is so much harm that is perpetrated by these roles and norms that also, as men, we get affected. And if we can challenge that as men, question some of these notions, I think it can actually help us. The next thing is still tied to the point I talked about earlier about socialization. When we buy toys for our children, for our kids, if I'm buying a toy for my son, I'll buy a gun, I'll buy a car. If I'm buying a toy for my daughter, I'll buy a doll. These are also images of socialization. We are communicating a certain message. We are propagating and perpetuating a certain narrative and certain roles of what it means to be a man and a boy. These notions where maleness or masculinity is tied to aggression, dominance, we need to question that and change how we socialize our young, including how we give them certain symbols through toys. Let's change that and make sure that we communicate a right message right from the outset. The last one is on encouraging boys also to connect and empathize with others. What it means to be a man is that, even to be a boy, is that you must demonstrate strength, competition, you must not show emotion. And this is not good for one's mental health. So we need to overhaul some of these ways through which children at an early age are taught about what it means to be a man and to be a woman. When we free these boys to express themselves, to be vulnerable, this is how we can have healthy families, healthy communities where people are able to connect with others. They are able to show their true emotion and they are not restricted by the negative notions of what it means to be a man. Thank you very much. I'll stop here for now. Over to you, Wanjiro.
Thank you again, Thomas. That was very beautifully said. Again, nurturing our boys from young so they can grow to be the men that we want to see in society is mandatory. And now lastly, let's hear it from Janani, please.
Thank you so much, Wanjiro. I think just to answer your question, I'll be quick because time is bad. I think I'll just structure my responses in three ways. The strategies as at individual level, community, and then as organization. I think at individual level, I think it is very important that we also educate ourselves about the harms that negative masculinities or harmful masculinities can bring to us. We also need to educate ourselves about the positive side of masculinities, and once we have educated ourselves, we are able to to speak about the aspect of positive masculinity and encourage other men to also express themselves in a positive way, not only which is beneficial to them, but also to the other members of the society. So I think educating yourself first about the benefits of positive masculinity and benefits of gender equality is one thing that you can do at an individual level. So what about at the community level? I think it is important that at community level, we just focus on hosting discussions like workshops where you can talk about positive masculinity, and why positive masculinity must be preferred over harmful masculinity. What does harmful masculinity do to men? What does positive masculinity do to men? And which one of those is our society needing so that it moves forward to, if we are supposed to achieve SDG goal number 5, which as it stands right now, we're moving backward from achieving that. This is because I think the focus has been so much on, gender equality while leaving the aspect of male engagement out. So I think we cannot get there if we don't put men in the same boat with us so that we can achieve gender equality. What about at organization level? I think it is very important that at organization level, we host trainings where we can train our staff to understand deeply what the different expression of masculinity means and how beneficial it is for them and also to the people around them. For example, at KCIC, when I joined the organization, now I created what is called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. And this council is now working to try to, educate men that are within the organization, but not only the men, so that we can understand issues around diversity, understand issues around gender, and this is helping so much. And also, still related to that, I post gender quotes every Monday at KCIC, and I try to come up with theme. Like, for example, during the 16 days of activism, most of the gender quotes I was posting was focusing on gender-based violence. And so you see, when I post these quotes, and then it triggers some sort of discussion, and these discussions always lead us to a positive side of where we want to be. We've discussed things like positive masculinity, and people are getting to understand that. So I think it is very important. And lastly, we should also have policies to help us in place so that the policy would be a driver that would drive us to achieve the aspect of gender equality that we want within our organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Janani, and thank you also for the work that you do. For a third question, how can we engage men as allies, or how can men engage themselves as allies? How do we practically explore and address allyship versus protectorship? And we'll have Janani answer that, please.
Yes, thank you so much, Wanjiro. I think it is very important that one of the best ways to engage men and women to work together, I think it is very important as program planners or programmers within different organizations. I think we need to focus on the aspect of providing both men and women with the agency, empowerment, and self-determination. For example, what we are doing at KCIC, we are establishing educational programs for women who are learning, and we are also mentoring them so that they build their skills in things like entrepreneurship. And so we are making these opportunities to be accessible to both men and women, although the focus is a bit more on women, and that is justified. So we're having to see men and women working together in addressing issues like climate, for example. And we also need to acknowledge and celebrate the different diversities that we have. For example, we need to have inclusive policies in our organization that appreciates everyone in their diversity, that appreciate everyone the way they are. And we need to also have the organization promote like something which I call you know, good language is when we are trying to communicate to the different members of the organization. There's some language that actually portrays dominations of one gender over the other, and I think that should be highly discouraged. And so we need to focus on an inclusive language within our organization. And then another thing is, I think it is important that we need to support collaborations over dominations rather than doing programs that actually perpetuate or reinforces the kind of gender stereotype that brings domination of men over women. I think we need to try to come up with programs that support collaborations between men and women. Another example is what we are trying to do right now. We are trying, like this year, we want to roll out what we call the Gender Action Learning System. This is an approach that will see men and women coming together and trying to address a common problem that affects them in the community. So that's one way. And how do we then engage men as allies? I think it is important that we, bring men in conversation about gender equality. As men, we do understand the best time where you can actually meet other men and then engage into such kind of conversation. So I think it is important. We also need to encourage self-reflection, which starts with me, starts with another man, it starts with you. We need to reflect on our expression of masculinity. Is it beneficial for us? Is it beneficial to the people around us? If we find that it's not taking us anywhere, then we need to actually make a shift in the way we express ourselves as men, so that we express ourselves in a way that can accommodate everyone around us. And then lastly, I think it is important that we need to highlight deeply, so that men can understand what it means to have a society that enjoys gender equality. So that means stating and educating people about all the benefits of gender equality. Thank you so much, Bonjour.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Janani. Very, very well put. And next, we will have the answer from Innocent. I'll ask the question again. How can we engage men as allies, or rather, how can men engage themselves as allies? How do we practically explore and address allyship versus protectorship? Over to you.
Thank you, Joe. I think firstly, men need to challenge their own privilege and power. There's a need for men to understand that in women's spaces, we don't take the lead role. So we need to avoid taking a lead in women's spaces. What we need to do is to encourage other men to reflect on their own privilege and power within the patriarchal setups that we are accustomed to. And then change our attitudes and structures that perpetuate inequality. And secondly, we need to foster accountability and self-awareness. We need to be accountable for our actions, and our actions that mainly demean women or mainly disadvantage women. So we need to do this by encouraging men to recognize and confront instances of sexism, misogyny, and gender-based violence. And again, I'll add to what Janani said, we need to foster collaboration and partnerships. There are a lot of initiatives that are being done by women to empower themselves to actually bridge the gap that is there between men and women. So it's important for us that as organizations, we partner with already established initiatives by these women so that we empower them and leverage resources, expertise, and networks in advancing our shared goals and priorities in wanting to achieve gender equality. Thank you so much, Wenjiro.
Thank you, Innocent. And lastly, we'll have Thomas answer this question for us, please.
Thank you very much. I think it is also very critical that we act in ways that build power with, not of many a time men would want to dominate and be the ones that are in control. that make all the decisions, but we need to understand that it is not going to benefit us and everyone if we take that approach. So we need to listen to women, listen to their stories, listen to their lived realities, and see where we come in and build together. The second point is to support women in tackling challenges that they face through collaboration and cooperation, as my colleagues have indicated. And we are not doing this in competition and working in silos. But if we cooperate and work together, it will have more impact than when we seek to come up with different programs that challenge or that push back on the efforts that are being made by women. And we need to understand that we create safe environments and spaces where we can work together and thrive. And the next one is to challenge notions of gender that depicts femininity as synonymous to weakness and masculinity as synonymous to strength. I'll still go back to the aspect of social construction of gender. And I think this is very important that as men, we challenge and transform that and be role models when it comes to that. It does not mean that being a man, you are the one who is the strongest, you are the one who is the most powerful, and the women are weak. So we need to transform that kind of mindset and thinking. Lastly, we need to reinforce women's agency rather than to reduce it. What it means here is that women can make decisions, they can act on those decisions and achieve a bigger impact. And we need to reinforce that and create a narrative out there that women can be good leaders, women can make decisions, they can own resources, they can control resources. And much as we live in a patriarchal society, but we are aware that there are certain aspects of patriarchy that are harmful to the healthy of families and to the achievement of our goal number 5, which is gender equality. I'll stop here for now. Over to you, Wanjiru. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Janani. And thank you, Innocent. That was all very well answered. So as we tie this up to an end almost, I'd like to just ask, what are your recommendations as the three of you for how we can attain what it is that we're trying to get to, which is positive masculinity and gender equality? How would you suggest, what are recommendations that you could summarize for all the people viewing today as to how we can attain this?
Thank you so much, Wanjiru. I think I'll jump in quickly. I think it is important now that we need to do, having attended this session, I think all of us can do some bit of self-reflection now and see what it means, like with our expression of masculinity, and we can also now be in the right position to kind of do advocacy, especially with the people who did not have the opportunity to attend this session. So I think we can advocate for positive masculinity. And I think we can now create some, community network and do some outreaches where we can now start to talk about things like positive masculinity, gender equality, and we can create also support network where, if you have issues, you can reach out to some individuals. And now, having attended this session, I think the big people that might have questions about positive masculinity, who can reach out to you, and you might actually provide them with valuable information that will help them to shape how they want to be in society. Thank you.
Thank you, Janani. Now over to you, Innocent.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll go on quickly because we are out of time, I understand. Role modeling and mentorship. We need to promote this in our circles. In our programming, we need to include the concepts of role modeling and mentorship in our circles. And then as a man also, you just need to be authentic. Make commitment to your own values and do not shy away from expressing your honest opinions about being a man in the fear of being viewed as weak by your peers. Just be authentic. And then we also need to grow and form meaningful partnerships, meaningful relationships with our fellow men. I mean, relationships that are based on respect, open communication, and non-violence. That way, we are redefining masculinity as to a healthy one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Innocent. And before I jump over to Thomas, I recommend that we all ask a few questions in the Q&A box right under, and we'll be taking the questions in just a few. But before we do that, let's hear from Thomas.
Thank you very much, Wanjiri. Yes, the first one is to design creative and innovative programs that leverage new forms of audience engagement. I gave an example of use of short film that we have used in many countries, and it's been well received. What those forms of engagement do, like short films, podcasts, is that they create safe spaces for communities to have conversations around these very difficult and sensitive issues. The next one is also to use intersectionality and gender transformative approaches to engage men and women, understanding that men and boys are not a homogeneous group, just in as much as women and girls are not one. So we need to design nuanced and focused programs and initiatives that address different groups, different genders, in a way that will make them come around the table, come up with solutions, and contribute to this debate and conversation. The next one is using robust M&E systems. I think without M&E, it would be very difficult to see whether or not we are achieving our objectives, whether or not we are making impact out there. And this will also help us to generate evidence that we can then take out there in societies, in communities where we work, and come up with better programming. The last one is to create inclusive and supportive workplaces for everyone, anchored on transformative policies. I'll give an example of paternity leave. If you are a man and you are asking for, say, 3 months paternity leave, many organizations do not have that, but it's usually thought that it's only women who need maternity leave so that they can take care of the babies and so, but also men need to be actively involved and present in the lives of children right from the outset. So as organizations, let's go back to our policies, interrogate whether or not they are facilitating a gender equality workplace, gender equality environment, and spaces, starting with our homes, our families, and our communities. Thank you very much. Over to you, Anjira.
Thank you so much, panelists, for answering those questions also well. We've received a few questions from our viewers and our attendees. I'll jump right in and pick a couple because we won't be able to go through all of them. And for our first one, how can cultural influences positively impact the fight for gender equality? This is open to all the panelists, whoever chooses to answer this. Or should I pick someone?
Yes, how do cultural influences impact the fight for gender equality positively? Yeah, I think when we look critically, there have been some components and some aspects of our traditional cultures that were not fair enough for every member of the society. For example, there are some cultural stereotypes and norms, especially in most places in Africa, that gives men more leverage and more power over women, which I think it is very, in a society like that, I think it is very difficult to achieve gender equality, especially if men are still viewed as the controllers who access resources and control it at the expense of women. Then I think our dream of achieving gender equality will be something that will take many years until we change this culture. So I think the cultural stereotypes and practices that is not inclusive and that perpetuate or justifies male dominance over women is something that will hold us back, and we need to influence these cultures in a way that is more conducive for every member of the society to thrive regardless of their gender. Thank you.
Thank you, Janani. I hope you've received your answer from that. And a question from Mariana Quiros. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The action items outlined depend on people advocating for equality and challenging perspectives, so change can happen. But with toxic masculinity so ingrained in today's society, how do we change these perspectives? How do we get men, especially those in power, to see that this is a community issue? It just seems like these action items are great, but for those who already know or believe in gender equality, but what about for those who don't? Over to our panelists.
All right. Yes. Thank you very much, Wanjiru. Yes, that's why I spoke about intersectionality in our programming as well, because it will also help us understand the kind of environment we are operating in, the kind of communities that we work with, the type of men and boys that we are working with, and then try to come up with programming that addresses the gaps, the challenges they have insofar as gender equality is concerned. If you look at, for example, if the concept of masculinity, if we can just break it down so that even small boys or young boys can understand that there are different types of masculinities. There are those that are harmful and those that are positive. But that masculinity in itself is not a bad thing. It is bad when it seeks to suppress, dominate, and uh, take away the rights and privileges of other genders. So that's how we can move with everyone on board. Of course, we are not at the same level of comprehension of these challenges and these issues, but we need to be alive to the fact that we are from diverse communities, diverse cultures, and diverse backgrounds. And through transformative and programming that is informed by intersectionality, then we can design accurate and proper interventions that address the exact challenges faced by our different communities and our different program participants. I don't know if that answers the question. Thank you.
Wanjiro,
Thank you. You
I would
want to
like
jump
to
in?
add, yes,
Go
I
ahead.
would also like to add something briefly. I think she said that, of course, like toxic masculinities that are ingrained in our day-to-day life in the society. And like, there's one thing which I can give with evidence is that male engagement holds immense promise in achieving gender equality. I'll give you an example in our program. Um, uh, Ever since we did an experiment with different groups of women that we support, where we piloted what we call male engagement dialogue. So the group that received the male engagement dialogue with their spouses and with their partners, they are participating in the program and their husbands are supporting them and their partners are supporting them without any problem. And the group that did not undergo the male engagement dialogue, which happened between the program team, the woman being supported, and then her spouse or partner. That particular group that did not undergo that had a problem where one of the spouse of one of the women we support decided to eject the wife from the program because he didn't understand what it means to be in the program, and he was very negative about the kind of engagement that was being, what that the wife was undergoing through. So I think these positive, toxic masculinities or harmful masculinities, I think we can change them when we engage men. For me, it has always worked that when you engage men become, they become proactive in advocating for gender equality. So if we don't engage men, we won't even achieve positive masculinity, and we will be moving backward from achieving gender equality.
Thank you so much, participants. Thank you so much, panelists. Unfortunately, that's it for our time. This has been a very, very progressive conversation, and I'm happy for all the over 100 people who joined in with us. I appreciate this, and I hope we can continue to nurture more platforms so we do have these conversations. We've seen the other questions that have been forwarded over to us. We'll find a way to answer those and make sure that we have a platform where we can share answers with you as well. May everyone have a good day. Passing it on to Sophie.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful conversations and insight that you've shared with us today. And so before we let you go, we just want to say thank you, of course, to everyone who has attended the session. Thank you to everyone who has helped organize and put this session together. We will take a short 30-minute break, and we'll be back at noon Eastern time in Canada for the second session. So for those of you who want to attend the second session on youth agro-entrepreneurship, please rejoin using the exact same link that you've used to join this session in 30 minutes. I will also put, when we close the session, you will see a link to fill out just to give us and share your feedback about the session. So if you are planning on coming to the next session, you can wait until the end of the next session to fill out the survey. But if you're leaving us and are not joining the next session, please do take 5 minutes to complete the survey that will appear on your screen once the webinar has ended. So thank you so much, everyone. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Je vous souhaite une excellente journée et au plaisir de vous revoir dans 30 minutes.